Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everybody's got some food, and we'll say special thanks to one of our clients, Illegal Pete's, for providing today. On behalf of Peloton and our sponsor, the Keener Group, I would like to thank you and welcome you for coming to the first installment in our 2012 series for Where the Leaders Are Headed. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Randy Hake, and I'm the president of the Peloton Holding Company. But I see lots of friends and clients in the audience, so I'll say hello. The program that we have this afternoon is, I think, really on target for us as executives, owners of businesses. And so, again, I think the first session this morning was certainly very well received and covering same material, but leadership, and we all hear and read and think, okay, how am I going to make an impact today on my business? Our guest speaker that's going to be focusing on the leadership topic this morning, I think you'll take away some very good insights. And then, unfortunately, you get to hear me speak a little on succession planning, and Marty sets me up with these hot topics, so I always have to follow the good guy. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the guest speaker, and his name is Dean Savoca, and he spends his time getting results and improving efficiencies within organizations, not only through their performance management systems, but building that, what we call emotional intelligence quotient inside those companies and their people. He's the past chairman of the board for the Cherry Creek Chamber of Commerce and is the incoming president of the National Speakers Association, which is the Colorado chapter. He holds a master's degree in organizational performance and change. And based on his experience in working with hundreds of people and conducting over 5,000 coaching sessions, today he's going to share some of those top leadership attributes with us, both in an awareness raising, look in the mirror kind of scenario for ourselves, as well as how does it work inside organizations. So please join me in welcoming Dean Savoca.
Great. Thank you, Randy. Good morning. I'm committed to, thank you.
Sure.
I'm committed to you leaving here today with some specific strategies that are going to help improve your effectiveness as leaders. And the title is How to Increase Influence. Leadership, How to Increase Influence. So what does that mean to you? Some of you may be thinking that it's about influencing your clients or influencing your employees, or influencing your organization, or even your industry. And you'd be right. But before you can influence your clients, your employees, your organization, and your industry, you first have to have the ability to influence yourself. So the conversation we're having today is really focused on your own personal development. And once you can work and influence yourself, then you can drive it and take it to another level to work with others and ultimately to have impact on your organization. So how we're going to define leadership or successful leader for our conversation is success is about achieving fulfillment in all areas of your life. And leadership is the ability to influence yourself and others to get results. As Randy shared, this content is coming from my firsthand experience in conducting over 5,000 coaching sessions. Many of those are with executives and business owners. And just reflecting, I've always been fascinated about what is it that creates success. That's my background before my own business was a performance improvement business. And I was always, what is it that makes people tick? What is it that creates success? So I reflected after doing all of those sessions and said, what is it that distinguishes the people that are most successful? So what I'm going to share with you today are the top 10 attributes of those leaders. And I've given you a handout that you'll be able to capture some notes on. And all you're going to do here, this is going to be one sheet handout, and we're going to talk about each one of these areas. It's called the Wheel of Influence. And as we talk about each one, I invite you just to write, self-evaluation. I'm a 1 through 5 in this area. Draw a line across there, and you just kind of shade it in. So when you leave here, you'll kind of see where you are in each one of these areas currently, and you want to first identify your strengths. Hey, what's working that I want to continue doing? And then secondly, identify where's that area that I have the biggest opportunity to grow or to improve. And leave with at least one of those areas you can focus on and have some specific actions or strategies that you can go apply. Does that make sense? And by the way, I do training and speaking all the time. And see, what people do a lot of times is, well, I've heard this before, so I'm not going to play along and fill out the handout. Absolutely, you will take more value from this session if you spend the time to take a few notes and just kind of write it down after each point, a couple notes, and fill in the shade as you go. This would be like a mini professional development plan for you when you leave. Okay? And also, this is interactive. So if you have a question, or I'm not going to make anybody talk, but if you have a question or a comment, all of you are business owners, all of you are leaders. If you have something you want to add to something I share, please raise your hand and share your comment. It might be valuable for others in the room. Share the outcomes. Leadership is a journey. The other piece is, it's not about being a 5, like you have to be a 5 on all these and that makes you good enough. It's not about that, right? This is a process. Leadership is about growth, continuing to learn and grow and work on yourself to continue to develop. All right, we'll talk about the 10 points. So the 10th one, I'll do a countdown here like David Letterman. Number 10 is successful leaders take 100% responsibility. What this means is I found that they don't make excuses, right? They don't blame that it's my employee's fault, it's the industry's fault, it's the economy's fault. They take full responsibility, because when we point outside ourselves and say it's somebody else, then we give away our personal power to be able to do something about it. These folks that are most successful take 100% responsibility. The only thing keeping us from what we want is our excuse we have of why we can't have it. And what do you think is the number one excuse I hear from people of why they don't get the results that they want? If only I had more time. It's everyone's favorite. If only I had more time, then I would get the results. Then I would be more effective. I'm going to invite you to see that as an excuse like anything else. Manage their emotions. This is one of the most critical ones. This is something I learned from Tony Robbins. Our emotional state affects the way, and emotional state, just how we're feeling, affects the way we think. It affects our decisions, which affects our behavior, and our behavior affects our results. So our emotional state is such an it's a core point that affects our performance. How many of you believe you control your emotional state? Come on, this is the part we got to play along. Are you already blaming other people? Somebody else did this to me, they made me, right? This is the part of saying I control my emotional state. And I'll share a little bit of what he talks about, and there's 3 main things that create our emotional state. The first is our physiology. So how we move our body affects the way we feel, right? When we smile, it can affect the way you hear that smile before you pick up the phone, right? Or if you've ever exercised and found that when you start doing something, you start moving your body, you all of a sudden feel differently, right? So physiology is number 1. And how you breathe. Number 2 is what you focus on or believe. Whatever you focus on, you feel, right? But we have control of saying, wait, I can shift my focus on this. So when you see what your emotional state is your physiology, your focus, or what you believe in that moment. And the third is the meaning you give to a situation, which is typically created by the language we use, right? Whatever language we use is going to create an emotional response, because language is how we create meaning. Does that make sense? Right? So a lot of people use very strong language like, oh, this is killing me, or I'm totally underwater, or I just got stabbed in the back. That type of dramatic language will have an emotional response. Just as when someone asks you how you feeling, you're saying fantastic, right? Oh, I'm getting by, right? It affects the way you feel, it affects your emotional state. This is a foundational piece. Take ownership for managing your state, because you manage your emotional state, it affects the way you think, it affects your behavior and actions, which affects the results that you get. Live with integrity, that's just congruency, right? When you're congruent, you find when you're congruent with what you're saying is aligned with your beliefs and your core values, that's living with an integrity, right? That's 100% responsibility. And with each of these points, I'm also looking at how can we apply this to the organization. This is really about your own personal and professional development, but let's also touch on some principles of how you can apply that at your organization, since many of you are leading an organization. So at an organization level, responsibility is about having systems in place for accountability. That people know what they're responsible for, and there's systems in place to make sure that people are accountable for what they're assigned to do. Okay. Anybody have any comments on this first principle? Taking 100% responsibility results in empowerment. We talked about that earlier, empowerment for yourself, and also trust of others. When you live with integrity, you take responsibility, then we have the trust with other people. So go ahead and take a moment on the sheet, the one that says responsibility, just kind of mark on there. 1 to 5 scale. This is only for you. A 5 being outstanding. I always manage my state. I take 100% responsibility. I don't live with excuses. Just kind of mark where you are in a 1 to 5 scale, and then just draw a line across and shade it in. Number 9, successful leaders have a clear vision. They know what they want. This is the first step towards any work that I do with organizations, whether it be a coaching or working with leadership and some organizational challenge or strategic planning. What's the outcome? What's the vision? Where do you want to be? If we don't know the end game, we can't work towards achieving the end game. So it starts with saying, what's that vision? And there's power in having clarity on it. A lot of times we get overwhelmed with the day-to-day stuff, but if we have a clear outcome on where we're going and we know our vision and we know the end game, then we can focus on their strategies and our plan to get there. This is a key one, write it down. I've seen with a lot of folks that, yeah, I've thought about that, or yeah, I know what my vision is. And I'll say, hey, can you send a copy to me? I'd love to see it. Well, it's not on paper, but I know in my head. It's very different. We get an amazing amount of clarity when we put things down on paper. We may have to think things through a little bit differently when you actually put words to it and put it down on paper. So writing it down is a key piece. Visualize it. Many of you have heard there's the concept of visualization. And when you study what I do in performance, a lot of times I study athletics because that's where there's peak performance. You ever wonder, like in the Olympics, like how is it that they, for 4 years, they prepare and they have 8 seconds and they deliver on that jump or that run or that swim or that, skiing down the mountain? It's fascinating, right? And one tool that they use is they visualize. And you've probably seen them in the starting gates before they go down. They're visualizing to go all the way down the course. And our brain does not know the difference between when we're vividly visualizing something and when it's actually happening, right? There was a study once that showed like practicing basketball, and they had free throws. They had a group that practiced a certain amount of time a day, right, like an hour a day, a group that didn't practice at all, and a group that visualized it. And they found that the group that visualized improved just as much as the one that was actually shooting. In fact, in one study, it actually was like a 1 or 2 percentage points higher because they made every shot, right? They visualized the success. So your body is memorizing and seeing that and feeling that the same way as if you were actually doing it. And at SMART goals. So once you have your vision, you have it down on paper, you know where you're going, then the next step is saying, okay, what's the goals? And to put those in a SMART format. Some of you may be familiar with the term SMART goals, but it stands for specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, I've also heard the word relevant, and given a timetable. Specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and relevant, and given a timetable. At an organizational level, leaders that live out this principle have an inspiring vision, and the term I love is realistic optimists. They're honest and realistic about where things are. If something's not working, they say it's not working, right? Real honest with where they are, but they're optimistic about where things are going. Because inspiration, if there's not hope or inspiration about where you're going, it's hard to rally around that. A clear vision results in focus. Anybody have any comments on this, on vision? Okay. When you have a clear vision, we have focus. So take a moment on your sheet. Do the same thing, 1 through 5 scale. Where are you here as far as do you know what you want? And once again, we're looking at your personal and professional development. You can also apply this and be thinking about your business as well. Do you have a clear vision that's down on paper? And I'm inviting you, many people do this for their business. I'm inviting you to do this in your personal life. Looking at the different areas of your life and what do you want for your well-being, whether it's your physical well-being or your relationships or your financials, whatever. Okay, so fill that in. Number 8, successful leaders demonstrate balance. And what I found here is, it was interesting. Anytime I would work with someone and I would ask them to share their top 3 goals, it always seemed that The folks that are most successful, one of them will be a personal goal. They usually have a financial goal or some employee challenge goal or some strategy they want to work through. But one would typically have to do with health and wellness. Something about they realize that when they pay attention to their health and wellness, that affects their overall performance, success, and fulfillment. Right? So this could be the different areas: physical well-being, mental well-being, talking about learning and growing, emotional well-being, relationships, spiritual wellness, whatever your faith is. But they pay attention and they have some type of consistent habits in those areas that are supporting their success. They also found sometimes we have to slow down in order to speed up. And I often use this analogy of a car. You're going 100 miles an hour or 70 miles an hour and you've got a flat tire, right? Well, I just got to keep going, or do I stop and change the tire? Which is going to get you your destination quicker, right? And so folks who are willing to slow down in order to speed up, they know that actually whether it's exercise or taking care of themselves emotionally or spiritually, whatever it is for you, can really make a difference in their overall performance. And that's part of it. This challenge your rules. This has to do with, actually I'll share the example. Rules are basically, in order for it to count, in order for it to count for me to exercise, I have to run 3 miles. If I don't run 3 miles, then it doesn't count as exercise. So if I don't have time or something else that's getting in my way of running 3 miles, then what happens usually? You don't go at all. Now, wouldn't it have been better if I would have walked a mile versus not going at all? So that's the idea, but we have rules a lot of times that keep us from taking action or make an excuse for us to say, well, if it doesn't do this, then it really is not going to happen. I had a client who is a president of a business and was dealing with a lot of stress and some challenges, and we were talking about what has worked for you in the past that creates your success, that helps you not to deal with stress. And he said, oh, I used to meditate, and when I meditated, it changed everything. He said, I would do that in the morning, and I'd say, well, how did it change your day? And he said, unbelievable. He said, I had more energy for the day. When challenges came up, I could deal with employees.